to another episode of the Accidental Badass Podcast, a podcast where I talk to people about the small acts of bravery that make them a badass. I'm Erin Hallstrom, and I am an accidental badass. In this episode, I talk to Garrett Gray and Michael Scampini about what it means to be a socially fearless badass. We talk about improv, public speaking, getting past the fear of rejection, and how we each found our own inner socially fearless badass. Enjoy the episode, and don't forget, rate and subscribe whenever possible in your favorite podcast app.
Garrett, Mike, welcome to the Accidental Badass Podcast.
Hey, Erin. Nice to be here. Excited to be on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Erin.
Yes, it's great to finally get you guys on. Let's start from the beginning. How did both of you meet? Mike, why don't you tell me how you both met?
Yeah, we actually met in Toastmasters, and I joined Toastmasters back in 2015, early 2015 in New Lenox, Illinois, where I joined just simply to get over my fear of public speaking so that I could do my job. I'm a software trainer. I do a lot with consulting, and I needed some communication skills and to be able to ramp that up. So I joined Toastmasters, and that's actually where I met Garrett on my second day when I did my first speech, actually. And when I met Garrett, he told me, he's like, good job, Mike, good job on your speech. And he told me to, join a bunch of clubs, and from there that kind of catapulted me through Toastmasters.
Okay. And Garrett, how about you?
Yeah, that's right, exactly. It was around 2015, and I belonged to Lincoln Way Toastmasters as well as many different clubs. And for those in your audience who don't know, Toastmasters is a name for an international nonprofit organization. It's basically a gymnasium for public speaking where you can practice your soft skills, your public speaking, so that when you're out in the real world, you're ready to go. And Mike spoke that night. He was looking for a mentor, and I like people who want to learn, and so it was a match that fit well right off the bat, and so it worked out. And I have a high regard of Mike. I trust him. I got to know him very well. I consider him, I don't know if he knows this, but I consider him like another brother. So I am very blessed to have met Mike many moons ago.
Well, Garrett, I do know that. I did ask you to stand up in my wedding, so I do know that as well. I feel the same.
Well, see, there we go. It almost sounds like when you're talking about how Toastmasters is like a gym for public speaking, it sounds like you, Garrett, were the trainer, and Mike was the new guy in the gym, kind of looking there like, what do I start on first? So would you say that was kind of accurate? I mean, you mentioned mentor, but it's almost like a training partner, so to speak.
Well, it's funny is, I would spot Mike while he was doing his chest presses and vice versa. But the truth is, it's a synergistic relationship. So in the beginning, Mike absolutely learned from me. And I used to joke, like, Mike's my favorite mentee. But the truth of the matter is, I've learned just as much from Mike Scampini as I'm sure I've imparted on him, if not more. And so it's very synergistic. Why doesn't a barber cut his own hair? He can't see the back. And so I might be able to show Mike a few moves here and there, but he also is his own person who has his own experience on how to do things, and he's really helped push me as a speaker and was there when I was doing TED Talks. So Mike's got my back. I have his back, and it's a synergistic relationship. I think you would agree, right, Mike?
Yeah, I do, Garrett. I do. Yeah, I was the guy following Garrett around carrying his book bag and all of his stuff. No, it's truly been, a life experience, a learning experience for me joining Toastmasters and meeting all the people that I have, especially Garrett, who really has helped me take my communication skills further than I ever thought possible. It's just been tremendous.
Great. So one of the things that attracted me to the club that we are in and how I really have kind of dived deep into things with our club is improv. And I was fascinated with improv. I knew from how, I found you guys in a meetup group and was really impressed. I thought improv is such a neat thing. And you guys, both of you, have had training, like actual, real training in improv. So that brings me to my next question. Garrett, I'm going to ask you first. What prompted you to get involved in improv?
Well, many things, actually. It was something I was always interested in. As a kid, I'd watch those shows like Saturday Night Live, SNL, they call it now for short, Mad TV, and other comedy shows. I was always interested in that. And there was a Toastmaster by the name of Ellen Schnurr, who at these Toastmaster events would lead improv exercises. And so she has been a catalyst for Mike and I to take a further role in improv. And as I mentioned about the mentee-mentor relationship, I tried signing up for courses on the Second City website years back. I found it frustrating, and I quit. When I met Mike a few months later, he was all gung-ho, said, let's do Second City, and he figured out their website, so we carpooled, and the rest was history. So Ellen Schnurr and Mike Scampini are my main peeps for the improv push.
Yeah, man. Every Sunday we would take a drive up to Chicago, sit in a little bit of traffic, and we'd find some free parking and walk up to Second City and just one class at a time. Just it was amazing that the growth. I never thought what happened would happen based on what we grew from doing the courses.
Absolutely, and laughter is the best medicine. So we'd be in these classes for 3 hours. I think our time was it noon to 3 or 1 to 4? But either way, it was 3 hours of laughter and collaboration with other team members in our classes, and it's so addictive.
So for those not familiar, which I would imagine are probably going to be a lot of people, can you explain in terms of like improv class structure? So explain what improv classes you took and how you found out about them. Mike, can you speak to that?
Yeah, it's really, we learned from, like Garrett said, we learned from Ellen Schnurr in Toastmasters. She came to one of our clubs. She did this workshop. I didn't even know what improv was. Garrett had learned of it, he talked about, but I didn't really ever realize. I just thought improv, like everybody else, it's comedy. When I tell people I do improv, they're like, oh, tell us some jokes. It's really not that. It's different. And when we went to Second City, I really didn't know what to expect. But I had a little bit of experience with Ellen. The classes that we took, it started off very basic, just really level A through E. So there's 5 classes, A, B, C, D, E. And with each class, you kind of build on the last one. Level A was all about just really learning the foundations of improv and getting out of your comfort zone. And then our teacher, actually, she was a rock star. Her name's Stacy Smith. She was awesome, and she was always my favorite teacher there at the level A. She even taught us a little bit of the advanced stuff. So as we went on, we learned more. We learned how to do scenes. We learned how to really adapt ourselves to those scenes and build characters. And it was just one class built on the next, right, Garrett?
Absolutely. And Mike's right. Improv basically means to create, right? To create. It's not always to tell jokes. Sometimes you create a scene. There's dramatic improv, believe it or not. But we did stick towards the comedy improv for the most part, and I agree with Mike. Stacy Smith is a rock star. She was a big influence because you can take a level A class and not decide, I don't want to proceed to level B. But because of her being our teacher, we absolutely, in the majority of our class, moved to the other levels all through to level E. So I think Mike hit the nail on the head. He gave the structure. The bottom line is when you work in a scene with partners, especially when it's made up on the fly, there's a foundational principle that you learn through these courses, and the fundamental principle is called yes and. So, for example, if Mike and I were in a two-person scene and we get a suggestion from the audience and they say, we ask for a relationship, and they say, doctor-patient, and Mike's the doctor and I'm the patient, or vice versa. If I start talking to Mike and he says, no, I'm a plumber, the scene crumbles. So you agree to what the other person assigns you, and then you build on it. You add another dimension to it or another detail. But that was another foundation principle that's not only in level A but through all the levels, because it's a fundamental. And at Second City, I also took some writing classes, and Mike also studied at Laugh Out Loud in Schaumburg. I took some short-form improv classes. Mike, I think you took the majority of what they offered there. I took some musical improv at Comedy Sports, but there's so many different levels of improv and different variety. So if you're somebody who likes to sing, or if you're like a lot of people and you don't like to sing, well, you're still going to probably sing. As we found out on our first day of class, when the very first game we played, Mike can attest, was called Sing Out, where you jump in, people surround you in a circle, you jump in the middle, you sing something, and your teammates are supposed to support you by singing along and also support you by tagging you out and taking your position to sing. And what that teaches you is, one, you have your teammates back. You don't leave somebody who's struggling out in the middle like that. You help them. And it really reinforces creativity and collaboration and good teamwork. And that's another ingredient to successful improv.
Yeah, I think
absolutely.
we've played that game, right? Yes, we have. I remember that.
Yeah, it's the first game. It's the first game I introduced. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, back when we used to meet in person. I remember that. Yes.
Because if you can sing in a group full of strangers right off the bat, whether you have the ability or not, then you can do anything. It's like jumping into the deep part of the pool, and if you can do that, then there's no fear for anything else. It's all about shedding your inhibitions. It's all about shedding your fears. Because
really the funny piece is, Garrett, that a lot of the people in our class, they were there to get famous. They were on TV shows. They were trying to get their acting role, all that stuff, and that's great. For me, though, personally, I wasn't there to do any of that. I wasn't looking to be on Saturday Night Live, and there's nothing wrong with people that do. But I was just there to grow my comfort zone, and gosh, it worked. It was crazy how much it worked. Better than Toastmasters has been, phenomenal for me, but improv pushed it to the next level. And that is really, truly how you can become socially fearless, is to do these improv practices.
Well, I think that leads me to kind of something that I wanted to ask both of you. It sounds like, Mike, you kind of you answered my question as before I asked it. So now I'm going to flip this to Garrett, and then Mike, if you have any follow-up, definitely jump in. But how has Toastmasters helped you with improv?
Oh, that's easy. Mike and I, both when we're still involved with Toastmasters, of course, we have a club that combines both Toastmasters and improv, but you're not afraid to go on a stage and speak in front of people or perform in front of people. And Mike and I are award-winning speakers, so going up in front of bigger crowds to do it, that took that inhibition off the table right away. We didn't have a problem volunteering, getting up there. Some people, as Mike said, you just want to grow your comfort zone. Well, our comfort zone had grown a little bit from Toastmasters. And we saw people, especially our level A class, that were very, very shy. And so for them to actually get up and do a scene, and then afterwards you can see they're kind of shaking and a little nervous. But the main thing is they got up, they did it, and the next time they were less nervous. And so I think Toastmasters was huge, and the fact it made you prepare to be in front of people and speak, and therefore when you have to speak in front of people, even when you don't have anything to say, it takes that out of the equation. So that was my biggest one for Toastmasters. Mike, what helped you?
Yeah, I would say for sure. I mean, it was, Toastmasters did come first, and being a Toastmaster, walking into that room at that first day of improv, if I had not been a Toastmaster, that would have been a lot more difficult for sure. Toastmasters gave us the ability to flex our speaking muscle, get those repetitions in, get up there over and over again and talk, and that's what really, pushed our confidence up. Improv just, was there to catapult it to a new level and taught us some more lessons along the way as well that we could apply to Toastmasters. I think they're definitely a good mix, and that's, why we did start the club, to put those two together.
Well, that leads me, geez, Mike. Okay, so that being said, Mike, I'm going to ask you, how has improv helped you with Toastmasters?
Oh, big time. Just because, even for me growing up, and in high school and college, I was always deathly afraid to speak in public. It just was not my forte. I would avoid it at all costs. I'd be driving to school, and if I knew I had to give a speech, I'd turn the car around and go back home. That's how deadly afraid I was. So when I got to Toastmasters, the fear started to go away, and there was still a lot of room for improvement. So what improv did for me is, as I did the improv, the speaking just almost became easy. And I still feel that little bit of the feeling you have before you get up there and while you're up there, that fear that you get. I still feel that feeling, but I don't identify it as fear anymore. It's more excitement. And it's while it's there, it doesn't, paralyze me to, not be able to get up there and talk. So it's just been tremendous in that way. So improv, just the singing, the dancing, the silly games that we do, when people don't know improv, they're kind of just like, what's going on here? But if you get in there and try it, you won't, you almost become hooked right away.
Right. How about you, Garrett? How has improv helped you with Toastmasters?
Well, I'll tell you how improv has helped me with Toastmasters and in life. In fact, Mike Scampini and I met John Goodman right before one of our classes at Second City because he was looking to take classes, and he flipped the script, and instead of us asking him questions, he was asking us questions for about 10 minutes about improv. And he asked, how is it? And I said, it's freeing. And he said, that's what I've heard. And he's a talented actor, and he was in town filming, and he just wanted to see if he could pick up some improv on the way, on his, days off. But what he said was, I said, I've seen you on SNL doing stuff. He said, yeah, but when people really cut loose, he takes a step back. And so in terms of how improv helped me with Toastmasters specifically, when I started Toastmasters, I wanted to speak excellently, flawlessly. But now I realize it's more important to have connection over perfection. So if you're connected to your audience, if they're engaged because they're laughing at jokes or you're using pauses successfully, you're making them think, you're making them feel, you're making them laugh, you're making them cry. It absolutely shedded that desire to always be perfect, because that can be crippling too, where, if it's not perfect, I'm not going to do it. And I think it's all about getting those repetitions in. The more you do, the better you get at doing that something, whatever that something is you do. So for me, it was very freeing, and I apply that in life as well. And that's why when I talked to John Goodman, that was the first thing that came out of my mouth, is freeing. And no matter what you do, things can go wrong, especially you have a PowerPoint. It doesn't work well. You got 40 people you got to talk to for the next 45 minutes. What are you going to do? Don't let it cripple you. Be socially fearless. Lean into it and do your best and see what happens, because a lot of times we are our own worst critics and we'll beat ourselves up, when the truth of the matter is I've seen a lot of speakers and a lot of improv performers kill it on the stage. They're awesome. And they come out and they're like, I don't think it was that good. And it's like, you were phenomenal. Maybe they're being humble. I don't know. But it's very freeing.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's given me the ability to just kind of get all the way to like going to weddings. So when I go to weddings, I would never dance. Like that's like way too out there for me. And that just makes me feel nervous, before. But now if I go to a wedding, I'm on the dance floor longer than anybody. And I don't know how to dance. I use an improv technique. You just copy what everybody else is doing. You just walk up to somebody, and if they're doing a move, then you start doing their move. What's the worst they can say? Oh, you don't know how to dance. And I'm like, well, I'm doing the same thing you're doing. So if I don't, neither do you.
Yeah, I get that. I know the very first meeting, I got up and talked. I got up there, I started talking, and when I sat down, I'm like, oh my gosh, that felt so good. You guys have known me now for 2 years, and no matter how many times I insist, I am shy, and, well, regardless of my introversion, extroversion, whatever, I insist, and I am actually very shy. No matter how many times I tell anybody this, especially in our club, like, no, you're not. Are you kidding me? And I think what the improv and the public speaking have done is made me realize, oh, my gosh, I'm a performer. I don't think my mom probably could have told you that from, the age of 3 for me, but I don't think I ever realized it until I got into this, and now I readily accept and own. Like, Erin, you are a performer, girl. Get up there and perform. And to that capacity, it does feel freeing. Like, this is who I am. I do like creating a character or having fun, letting loose. And I know yes and is the fundamental groundwork of improv. And I think it's a great way to pivot, whatever life throws at you. Life throws to you coronavirus, and it's like, well, yes, and now what am I going to do? Yes, I'm stuck inside the house. Yes, and what am I going to do now?
And so that's one of the reasons why we had the club in person. Corona happened, and now we have the club on Zoom. And we did that pretty seamlessly very quickly. And why is that? Because that flexibility that you get from doing improv, creating on the fly, in real time, and being in the moment. Those are like critical things to be fully present in the moment so that it doesn't cripple you into non-action. And Erin, I have to say, well, I said earlier about leaning into something. When Mike and I would give the workshops before we started the club, you were one of my favorite persons, not just performing, but I would pick on you to demonstrate games. Why? It's good to have clear demonstration when you're sharing an improv game for newbies, and you would always knock it out of the park. You were and are a performer, so and I still pick on you today when I need to demo. You're usually my first go-to person. So
you let me. Thanks, Aaron. You let me off the hook.
Oh yeah, I mean, I emote better than anybody I know, so. Finally a good use for all the emotions that I've probably bottled up in the 40-plus years I've been on this planet. Now it's, bring them all to the forefront and let's have some fun with it. So one of the things that I wanted to get to the kind of the origin, the genesis of how we all started to know one another is our improv-themed Toastmaster group. And it sounds definitely like improv and Toastmasters are like the match made in heaven, perfect marriage. It's speaking, being comfortable doing it in a freeing way, being able to pivot, being able to yes and yourself out of any given situation. So, Mike, I'm going to ask you first, what compelled you and Garrett to start an improv-themed Toastmaster group?
It stemmed from a conversation we had on our long drive in traffic back from Chicago to the suburbs. We were doing improv every week. We were also involved in a lot of clubs. I think at that point I was in, 4 clubs. So I was doing Toastmasters at least once a week. And it was a very big part of my life and both of them. And just the benefits we were both getting from it. We wanted to share that with others and thought, why not combine the two? How cool is that? Because really, when you look at Toastmasters, when it started, I believe I read that it began with table topics. And for those new to Toastmasters, table topics is impromptu speaking. You get asked a question, or you get shown a quote or a picture or whatever, and you have 2 minutes to stand up and say something on the spot. And it helped people to really get over their fear. It helped them to think on their feet. And then Toastmasters, I think, evolved over time with more, where people could work on projects and leadership and so forth. So when we were going to improv, really improv is table topics in a way. So I think the thought was that we had is, why not put improv games within Toastmasters? And we became close with Ellen, and she was traveling around to different clubs doing the improv, and it just fit. Like, we just saw the fit, and we saw the vision for the club. So eventually, when we were ready, I'd moved to Naperville right before. I was ready to advance to get my final award for Toastmasters. That's the Distinguished Toastmasters Award, the DTM. And to get that, you need to sponsor a club or sponsor something. And I chose to use my sponsorship for a club. Garrett needed that as well for his. So it was a perfect fit. We also made a lot of contacts in Toastmasters. So we were able to put the two together, and we tried it out. And our first meeting that we had, Garrett, what was it? Almost 30 people there that we gathered together in that workshop.
Yeah. Yep.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Garrett. So
Garrett, had that been a go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, you go ahead. Finish what you were saying.
I was just going to say, had that first day been a bust, that could have been discouraging. We probably would have kept going, but we knew right away we were right. Our vision was correct, that we had something here. We had an idea here, and from there, it just exploded.
Right. Hey, Garrett. So here's my question for you. Tell me, who came up with the name Yes and Toastmasters?
That's funny. Well, let me roll back a little bit. And like Mike said, the genesis was in his car on car rides to Second City, where we came up with this idea for the club. And like he said, in order to reach higher levels of Toastmasters, one of the things offered was to build a club or sponsor a club. And this is where a third person who helped create the club, Noel Ganay, and he was very instrumental. The duo became a trio. He helped us spearhead the club. He knows the ins and outs of Toastmasters. He has a great skill set and organization. So he helped spearhead this, and we would have these meetings at my lunch break and on their lunch breaks on the phone, and we brainstormed for different names for the club constantly. And I think it was one of these brainstorm sessions where I said, we just need a name for our Yes and Toastmasters club. And then that stuck, kind of like, hey, that's actually kind of good. And the rest is history. But I agree with Mike, what he said earlier. If that first meeting was probably a little bit tepid, we would probably be worried. But nothing attracts a crowd like a crowd, Soul Asylum or P.T. Barnum. I'm not sure who said that.
Yeah, and actually to add on that, Aaron, about the name, Yes and Toastmasters sounded a lot better than Improv Masters Toastmasters. So that's why we did not go with our original thought.
There were some clunkers in there, yeah.
Goodness.
Yeah.
Thank goodness. Oh, my goodness. I can't even imagine. Improv Masters, Toastmasters. I mean, Yes and Toastmasters. It's just the perfect amount of syllables. It rolls off the tongue. Wow, Improv Master. Wow. One of these days we're going to have a look back on the things that would have never been, or we'll have a meeting theme where it's just talking about all the, did you know this group could have been called XYZ.
Well, Aaron, if I may, they say the shortest distance between two people is a smile. I think that's a quote. And at these demo meetings and workshops we would do with the improv, you have strangers who just met effectively 10 minutes before laughing at great levels. And so it becomes people who are strangers all of a sudden feel a camaraderie in a very quick, short time. And so we front load our meetings with, when they're in person, 30 minutes of improv. And so even if you're a guest to the club, all of a sudden you feel like part of the club. When you come on Zoom and you're onboarded and involved with the improv and you're laughing too, you become closer to the club right off the bat as well. So the improv is dynamite with Toastmasters. It's like the Reese's peanut butter cup, right? Two great tastes and one great invention. And I'm very, very happy with the success we've had in a short amount of time. And it came together with hard work and a lot of vision ahead of time.
Definitely. As one of your first, I guess, students, trainees, I don't know what the proper term is, but
founding member?
One of the founding, sure. I call myself an OG. I'm one of the OGs of the YAT.
That works.
Yeah.
Yep.
But we talk a lot about being socially fearless within our group. So I want to ask both of you, Mike first. What does being socially fearless mean to you?
Yeah, good question. It's something I picked up from improv, and kind of what it did for me and what it made me feel is more socially fearless. So a lot of times when people walk into a room full of people, their first initial thought is, unconsciously, what are people thinking of me? It's almost an instant. I think the average person is pretty nervous to walk into a room with a bunch of people they don't know, whether it's a wedding or a family party. Those situations are tough, right? And we have to do them. I mean, if you have a spouse or if you have friends, you're more than likely you're going to run into that time where you have to walk into a room or walk into a gathering where you don't know anybody. And that's that social fear that you can get. Even if you're the most outgoing person, you can still feel it. What Toastmasters did is help with that, but improv just took that to another level. And with these practices, and really you can't read this stuff in a book. You can't go learn how to speak in public in a book. You can't read how to do improv exercise in a book. It's the equivalent of going to the gym and watching workout videos, but just sitting in a chair, right? You might learn some cool moves and some cool lifts, but you're not going to get anywhere unless you get up there and do something with it. So when you practice what Toastmasters teaches and you practice what improv teaches and the principles, that is what can help you overcome that fear, because you're constantly pushing that feeling that you get when you do feel that feeling of, I'm in a room with a bunch of people I don't know. You know that feeling, right? You're constantly doing that over and over and over and over again until you own it and it no longer owns you. That's socially fearless to me. Garrett, what do you think?
No, absolutely. 100%, Mike. And to even add on to that, I believe it's Oprah Winfrey who says success is when opportunity meets preparation. And as Mike mentioned about the repetitions, even in improv, if you're doing different games all the time, you're still getting reps in to do things, create on the fly in real time, be fully present in the moment. And so what happens, what I found with Toastmasters and improv together, because it does augment you to different heights, is that when opportunities present themselves, whether they're at work or outside of work, there's people who take a step back because they're fearful of, well, maybe I won't look cool, or maybe I'm not confident enough in doing this. But the trick is the more you do, the better you get at doing whatever you're doing, and then the better you get at doing that something, the more confident you are. And so that's the trick. That's that preparation. So a lot of times I've been called to speak in front of people. Sometimes it's been I gave 2 TED Talks a few years back. I DJ'd on the Beatles channel for Sirius XM. I give presentations at work. I'm a chair of the Planning Commission where I have to speak publicly all the time. I've had to give eulogies, which is another type of hard thing to give when you're emotionally charged. But are you ready when there's not time to be ready? So dig your well before you're thirsty. Make sure you do those reps. Make sure you're prepared so that you are ready. You're fearless to tackle whatever comes your way. Don't let opportunity pass you by.
I'm re-nicknaming you, Garrett, like Quote Master Flash. You are like Mr. Quotes, always on the quotes. Yeah, I just came up with that. I'm gonna notarize it, and you are Quote Master Flash from here on out.
Can I quote you on that, Aaron?
Yes. Yes. Direct quote. Yes, you can. So, the three of us clearly not scared to speak in public. I think we've established that so far. But a lot of people, I'm sure, who are listening to this are. And I want to know from you, because both of you have indicated, there was some trepidation, there's some nervousness, what have you, of speaking. So why do you think so many people are nervous or scared to speak in front of a crowd? Garrett, why don't you go first?
Sure, Aaron. Mike talks about this all the time. He's talked about it in speeches because he said he didn't have butterflies in his stomach. He had pterodactyls. And part of that is people don't want to be perceived as not looking cool, unsure, stuttering, misfiring on their words. And I think that's a big reason why. Another thing is there's a halo effect. Everybody thinks the spotlight's always on them when people are more interested in themselves. So if you fall and trip in public, people are probably looking in their phones and don't even see it. That's the unfortunate reality of the world we live in. But I'd say that's the number one reason why people don't want to get up and speak. But the good thing about it is nobody's born speaking a mile a minute and just has this great gift. There are some gifted speakers for sure, but you can work on it, right? I had to learn math when I was a kid. I'm an engineer. I'm a professional engineer. I do math for a living. I have to write reports, but it doesn't matter if you're the hardest working engineer, the most intelligent, the most creative. If you can't communicate your ideas successfully to a client or your boss or your peers, you will fail to make a sale, and typically you'll fail to even keep your job. So, and whether you're selling flowers at the side of the road or in a hoity-toity laboratory, you need to be able to effectively communicate your ideas to the others around you. And I think that's a soft skill that, for whatever reason, does not get reinforced a lot in schools. I know as an engineer, I had a lot of classes with numbers, and then at the end of the year, they'd say, now you're going to get in a team and give a presentation. And they were awful presentations. They were death by PowerPoint, where people have all these stats, and each slide is chock full of stuff. You can't even absorb anything. If somebody speaks for 10 minutes fast, and they don't pause for you to absorb one thing, they've failed to effectively communicate their ideas to you. So sometimes you need to just slow it down. And my advice to people, especially young people, my only regret of Toastmasters was not joining soon enough. I'd be in the unstoppable force, but I'm a stoppable force right now. That's why I always go to this Toastmasters meeting, is to continually work on my craft.
Okay. How about you, Mike? Why do you think so many people are nervous or scared to speak?
It's funny. If you really think about why, it doesn't quite make sense, right? If you're literally standing up in front of people talking, why is that so scary? I'm sure you may have heard of this, but Jerry Seinfeld, he said it best. The number one fear is public speaking among people, and that's actually over the fear of death. People are more afraid to speak in public than they are to die, right? And in his stand-up joke, he says it's something. And I'm gonna play Garrett's role of Quote Master Flash here and try to get this right. But he says that means if you're at a funeral, the average person would rather be in the casket dead than actually give the eulogy, right? Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's crazy. People are more afraid to speak in public than they are to die. I don't know. There's many theories behind it. I actually wrote a paper in college about it and did some research on it. And I think it's ingrained in our DNA. I think that we deep down, we fear rejection, because if back in the caveman days, if you were rejected, then you were not able to spread your genes, right? You're not able to survive, in a sense. So I think it's something that's ingrained in our DNA. Like rejection is bad, and we don't want to get rejected from the tribe, right? We don't want people to reject us or make fun of us, because that could, lower our chances of living a happy life and fulfilling life. So it's sort of, once you get kind of over that and realize that, build awareness on that, you can overcome it. It's just a matter of practice. At one point I felt like there was no chance for me, like there's no way it could possibly happen, until I started learning about it and figuring it out. It's just something you have to figure it out, but once you figure it out, you have to do it, and that's how you become better. So for me, I think it's just a deep-seated fear unconsciously of rejection. That's why people are afraid.
And I never even thought about that, but with you saying that, it makes me think, now that I've been doing this for a couple of years, the number of things that I like to say, I look fear in the face, that I almost, not that I fear rejection, if anything, I kind of flip at the bird, but I think I definitely have noticed that I do speak up more. I use my voice a lot more, because the fear of rejection isn't as strong now. And almost to the point of what you both have said, that so what if something rejects me? What's the worst thing? I mean, I'm not afraid to speak publicly. So death, shoot. I mean, I'm afraid of death. I am more afraid of death than I am public speaking.
Yeah, truly.
Me too. Yeah, of course.
Truly, but
I want to quote Wayne Gretzky, the hockey player, who says, "You miss 100% of the shots you don't take." So, like you said, Aaron, the fear of rejection. Well, you know what? If you don't ask the question, you know what the answer is going to be. No, right? So you have to ask the questions.
Yeah.
But just remember, though, it's easier said than done, though. Just knowing that does not make you overcome it, because it's at such a deep level that the only way it can be overcome is it has to be faced over and over again, until then you can overcome it. That's the key. For sure. I mean, ask anyone who knows my dating history. I mean, okay. We're not going to go down there. That was your little comic relief for the night. Okay. So let's keep it the theme. The theme of my whole podcast is badassery, and the whole origin for starting the podcast, and especially it being the accidental badass, is the little acts of bravery that kind of make us the badasses we all are. So I want to dig in, let's roll up our sleeves, and I want to know, and I want you both to tell me, Garrett, you first, what are some of the badass things that improv and Toastmasters have helped you with?
Okay, that's fair enough. I will say this. It's funny you mention being a badass and an accidental badass, because all my life I've been a purposeful, nice guy. But I think there's something badass about being a nice guy, because you're kind, you help others, and to tell you the truth, with these speeches and Toastmasters and everything else I've done, you can win trophies here and there, but at the best case scenario, you put them on a shelf, they gain dust. But when you're able to lift people up, one of the best things in Toastmasters was meeting you, Aaron, and meeting Mike. And when you're able to collaborate, lift people up, all of a sudden you have a true friend who has your back. So bottom line is some of the things that Toastmasters has made me badass, I guess, is I've affected people's lives in a positive way. You can affect people's lives, and it's in a negative way. So I'd say some of the badass things I've done is I've seen people achieve heights that they never thought imaginable. And then once they achieve those heights, whether it's a Mike Scampini being a 2-time evaluation champion in the district, or Lori Resnick, who in a mere 5 or 6 months at Toastmasters, with some mentorship by me, was able to finish 3rd in this big district international competition. To see people's on switch get turned on and the confidence in those people. And then they're true friends. They're lifetime friends. And so for me, I think that's pretty badass when you can make a positive difference in people's lives, because I think you go on social media, you go on Facebook, and it's toxic. You see people bringing people down. And I don't think that has a good net effect. Something like Facebook should be keeping people together or bringing people together. But I think it has it's a more complicated effect than that. Now, improv, some of the badass things I've done in improv would be we sold out shows at Second City, my improv troupe, 100% gluten, and I love those guys. Mike knows some of them because they were my team members were in my class with Mike, and the process of creating a show, and a lot of our shows were sketch shows, part sketch shows, part improv shows, but to go through that process and practice and rehearse and all that work leading up to so many laughs that we have that aren't on the stage, and then we can bring laughter to people on the stage to that whole process. There's something I always quote, Aaron, or I don't quote, it's my own quote, about collaboration and improv. There's a lot of improv games that you have to lean upon your partners, and they have to help lean upon you, and you help each other out. There's that special collaboration that makes you do things that you can't normally do by yourself, right? On the improv stage, there's a lot of things that are bigger than me and bigger than my teammate, but not bigger than all of us, right? And so I always say this about the Beatles. The Beatles had more number one hits in the U.S. as a group in a mere 8 years than they did as solo artists for the next, I guess it's been 50 years and counting since they broke up. They broke up in the 70s. Yeah. So as individual solo artists. So that's amazing of how you can do more with more. 2 heads are better than 1. 3 are better than 1. And I think that's pretty badass when you're not limited by your own abilities because of your team members. And when I say team members, I mean people you can trust, you can lean on, you can collaborate. And Mike's been a teammate of mine. And so if something like those names, hey, that doesn't sound good, Garrett, you tell me. Because we want the right thing that will work for the people, not to, push up somebody's ego. Well, I named it or you named it. We just want it something that works. And that's the same way on the improv stage.
Right. How about you, Mike? Using badass in the context of great, awesome, cool stuff, what is some of the badassery that improv and Toastmasters has brought your direction?
Yeah, good question. A lot of stuff come to mind. With Toastmasters first, just meeting all the people. I've made so many connections. My LinkedIn it blew up after Toastmasters. I've met so many people there, and really just the growth of just being able to speak in public, but also to compete. For me, I'm a very competitive person. I grew up playing baseball and sports, all the time, whether it be organized or backyard with friends. And I always loved to play sports because of the competition. I love to watch sports and play. And I didn't realize there were speaking competitions. I remember when I was first introduced to the competition world, I was actually the center of a competition for my very first speech and didn't even know it. I was like, oh, okay. Like I had all these people lining up to evaluate my speech and tell me where I did well and where I could improve. And I'll be honest, it was a little confusing. But, as I continued with Toastmasters, I learned more about it and was encouraged to compete by Garrett and some of my other mentors in Toastmasters, and ended up, I kept trying it. And, actually my second year in Toastmasters, I was able to win an entire competition for the evaluation contest. So that was pretty cool. I mean, that took the speaking to a whole new level, which then, of course, led to improv. And being in improv, I performed on stage at Second City. I think that was pretty badass, right? Like, I don't
totally.
Yeah. And also speaking of meeting people, when at Toastmasters, I actually met the woman I'm going to marry, my fiance Chrissy. I met her at Toastmasters. You can find love at Toastmasters. It's true, you can. Yes, it's true. So those of you out there looking for love, maybe in Toastmasters, maybe not, but you might get lucky and meet them there. But yes, I did meet her there, and we're scheduled to get married next year. Hopefully, COVID doesn't get in the way of that. Hopefully, we're able to have a full wedding. But either way, yes, Toastmasters, improv just have been badass overall.
Be still my romantic heart. I still think that's one of my favorite stories of Toastmasters.
Thank you.
And yes, and I know we have some people in our club that constantly tease each other over the, okay, where's my match? Come on, I'm waiting for my match to show up. But yeah, yeah. I think to both of your points, I will say our group and the people that I have met, mostly because of you guys, but definitely just seeing within the Toastmaster community, just the sheer value of people that you meet and become friends with. And I like to think, our group is the family I didn't know that I needed to have. That it's like, oh, these are people who, similar to me, want to be more articulate, maybe want to be a little more socially fearless, want to kind of get a mastery of presentation that they maybe didn't feel that they had before. And every time we meet, every time we do our Zoom calls, and even some of the stuff that we've done in person, it's just like, yeah, these are my friends. It went beyond, hey, these are the people that I do my public speaking reps with, to like, oh yeah, that's my friend Mike, that's my friend Garrett, that's my friend Valerie, that's my friend Mark, that's my friend Denise. Like, yeah. So it's been quite a pleasure. So I have one last and final question for both of you, and I'm going to ask you this, Garrett. If someone is on the fence about testing the waters, about improv, or this Toastmasters thing we keep talking about, why should they give it a try?
Aaron, tell your listeners to turn up the audio, because this is gold. This is a little-known quote from Benjamin Franklin that, if you know me, you hear me say it all the time. Do nothing, and nothing happens. Do something, and something happens. And as I talked about earlier today, do something. Whether you want to try speaking or improv, do something, because the more of that something that you do, the more confident you'll be, and the more confident you are, the better you'll get at it, and the better you get at it, the stronger and more confident you'll be. So I always tell people, just do it. And if you wait, my biggest regret, and I mentioned this earlier, for Toastmasters was that I didn't join soon enough. I wish I did.
Yeah.
I wish if I was 18 or 19, these soft skills, one of the things I learned, I just got my MBA at St. Xavier, and one of the textbooks said the number one criteria that employers look for in their employees to raise to management levels is the ability to effectively communicate. The ability to effectively communicate. And unfortunately, a lot of those same grads were deficient in just basic communication skills. So if you're able to up your soft skills, it'll open up doorways inside of work, that impacts your earning power, but also outside of work. I know that I've had so many great opportunities. The TED Talks, I host a local public access TV show, just a lot of opportunities that come where you can use your speaking skills, take leadership roles. So just do it.
All right. Thank you, Quote Master Flash, Garrett McKnight. So I have it on now. Now you have a really long nickname. So, Mike, you are the current president of our club. And before we wrap up at the very end, is there anything that you want to plug before we sign off?
To kind of build on what Garrett said, there's, joining Toastmasters, there's really two things there. It's, number one, you can try it, and if you don't like it, if it's not for you, then you don't have to, if you find out. But I guarantee you come, you'll see the benefit. And number two, it's not expensive. Toastmasters is a nonprofit organization. We don't make profit off of it. We just run the club. Our purpose is to help others like you get better at speaking and leadership. And whatever your goals are, we're here to help you with that. It's like Garrett said earlier, the playground for public speaking. It's where you can get up there and fall down, and we'll help lift you back up. So attend Toastmasters, attend Yes and Toastmasters, and see if it's a good fit for you. We meet the second and fourth Thursday of every month. Our next meeting is October 22nd, and it is at 6:30. You can find us at yesandtoastmasters.org. We welcome all. You're free to attend as a guest as often as you wish. So that it's really, you can attend, see if it's a good fit for you, and if it is, great. We'd love to have you at the club, and if not, that's fine too. So you can still attend again if you want to try. But guarantee you, once you test the waters, you'll know that it's a good fit for you. And again, it's the best $53 every 6 months I spend because of all the growth it's given me in my life, and it's also contributing to an organization that's helping so many people get better together.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. This podcast wouldn't have even been an idea had it not been for doing Toastmasters. I said this in a speech recently, a contest speech, if you will, on that, Toastmasters finally had me feeling comfortable enough to speak in front of a crowd, but without the crowd, I felt a little lost. And so, lo and behold, you know what? I have the materials. I'm going to start my own podcast. I do it for work, but it was the Toastmaster in me, the improv performer, but mostly the Toastmaster in me that said, you can do this. You know how to speak. You are articulate. Get on a microphone and start talking to people. And to the point earlier of just the doing the repetitions and the, worrying that you're going to be rejected by someone or something, and just improving, pivoting, a yes and. So maybe you're talking to someone and they don't respond the way you think or thought they would. Well, you've got the training. You're able to, keep talking. So, yeah, even this podcast, I credit both of you a little bit with even having the confidence to do this podcast too. So thank you both. I appreciate it. So
absolutely,
it's great and fitting to have you both as guests.
I'll take the credit, Aaron, but it's all you. You're awesome. We think that of you. So, but I'll take the credit.
Yeah.
Unless you get super rich here, Aaron, then throw a guy a bone.
Then throw us some royalties.
Yeah, loyalty. Yes. Yes, definitely, for sure. Well, thank you both for hanging out with me today on the Accidental Badass podcast. It has been just an absolute joy. I always like talking to both of you, and it's been so much fun. And I hope people who are listening, I know if they know me, they've heard me talk about Toastmasters, and they probably heard me talk about it ad nauseum. I can't recommend it enough, but hopefully after listening to this episode, they'll give it a shot because, again, what's the worst thing that can happen? And quite frankly, we're still in COVID times. We're still kind of stuck inside. We are in the state of Illinois, at least the three of us are, and it's going to be winter soon. So what else do you have to do? Use your hibernation time to become a socially fearless speaker. So next spring and summer, you will hit those bars, those parks, those schools, those whatevers, and you will just be the most socially fearless speaker, performer that there ever was. So, thank you both for joining me. It has been great to have you on, and I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks.
Loved it. Yeah.
Take care.